Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
$1 million and some spineless Republicans and Democrats ultimately result in same-sex marriage in New York. I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel and dean of Liberty University School of Law. Joining me is Matt Barber, vice president for Liberty Counsel Action and also associate dean at the law school. It looks like, Matt, what happened in New York is that the Gill Foundation, or Tim Gill, who is a person who was the inventor, creator of the courts software, and that's where he made his millions of dollars, pumped money into New York politics over about $1 million to knock off some of these individuals that voted against this same-sex marriage proposal that came up a couple of years ago, and as a result replaced them with pro-same-sex marriage individuals. And that margin of error, including some Republicans that shifted their vote, was the margin that they needed to pass same-sex marriage in New York.
That's right. In fact, there were, I believe, 4 Republicans who had previously voted to defend natural marriage, who this time, through a series of, quote, incentives, changed their vote and voted in favor of counterfeit same-sex marriage. My understanding is that those Republicans and Democrats alike, that there's already a groundswell and a movement in New York to target them to have them replaced by some individuals who will support the natural institution of marriage in the future.
Well, it's a real tragedy that I read from one of these Republicans who voted the right way when it came up before and then switched the vote and said this time he wanted to do what's right and was listening to his constituents and changed his view on this issue. The fact of the matter is marriage doesn't change. It doesn't change because it's wrong. Same-sex marriage is wrong a year or two ago, and all of a sudden it's right today. That's the problem with some of these individual politicians, Republicans or Democrats, that have no foundational value, and they just change their political votes based upon how the winds of time are changing. We need people in office that have solid grounding, solid values, and I think the people in New York will vote these individuals out of office. And I think also we ought to encourage them and really work towards a constitutional referendum that will overturn this in the long run.
Well, unfortunately, people want to be liked, and they don't always do the right thing when that's up against being liked. And the homosexual activist lobby and activism, the activists in New York were very loud, very in your face, and some of these people flipped because really they were intimidated, I believe, into voting the wrong way. And, you know, Matt, this is the whole thing about relativism. Marriage, it's no more hateful to say that marriage is only between a man and a woman than it is to say that the sun rises in the east. It just is. I mean, they can no more change the institution of marriage through some vote with the legislature than we can vote to make the sun rise in the west. Marriage is what marriage is and always has been, and to try to radically redefine it like this is really tragic for our nation. And, you know, Matt, we've talked about it before. No society that has ever abandoned the recognition of the import of marriage and family and monogamy has survived. And this is a devastating blow to our society here in the United States.
It really is. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that some people said, well, they changed their votes because now you've got this protection for religious objectors so they don't have to perform marriages. The fact of performing a same-sex marriage is the least of the concerns of same-sex marriage. That's the least of someone's concern. And so what if they have a provision that allows them to opt out because of a religious objection? The bigger impact of same-sex marriage is not that someone would have to perform a same-sex marriage, but how it transforms the society in general. The fact of the matter is there's no opting out for parents or children in public schools that will now be impacted by same-sex marriage, where they're taught not just about same-sex marriage, but they're taught about radical sexuality and abhorrent sexuality that will be part of this inculcation, mind-changing public school system. It's not going to protect individuals who want to be, for example, an apartment owner, have a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, that was an example.
A photographer that does not want to be a photographer for a same-sex marriage. A printer, a publisher that doesn't want to promote or publish same-sex marriage propaganda or radical homosexuality propaganda. It's not going to protect those. That's the bigger impact that this same-sex marriage law will have. The least of the problems is someone who wants to object because they don't want to perform an actual wedding.
Well, the religious exemptions language and the whole debate, that complete red herring. That was an illusory promise, if you will. That was they threw that in there to try to appease and give license to those who needed to say to their constituents, look, I'm doing something. I at least got religious protections. Complete red herring. As you point out, the bed and breakfast owner. We have a perfect example in Illinois where they don't even have same-sex marriage, just civil unions. A Christian couple that owns a bed and breakfast has their kids living there in the home. They said that they would not host a civil union ceremony in that bed and breakfast, and they have a complaint was filed against the Human Rights Association organization there in Illinois, and it looks like they may be sued. We can expect that kind of. This is a goose that laid the golden egg for homosexual activist attorneys.
In Northern Virginia, where you don't have same-sex marriage, but where one of the counties illegally passed a same-sex domestic partnership type of law and a discrimination provision into their local ordinance. In that particular situation, we had an individual who reproduces videos, and he's a printer, and someone sent him an email wanting to have him produce or copy these pro-lesbian, pro-homosexual videos, and he said no, he wouldn't do that. They filed a complaint against him, and the Human Rights Commission in Arlington County sent out a press release to 5,000 media entities. We ultimately got involved and stopped that, but that's what they want to do. They want to shut down individuals because of their opposition to same-sex marriage. You had a photographer in New Mexico that was fined because he didn't want to photograph a same-sex civil commitment. You have the same thing in New Jersey, where a church that had a pavilion that did not want to rent it out to a lesbian same-sex civil union commitment ultimately lost their property tax exemption for that particular situation. So that's the kind of impact that this will have in New York.
I've often said the sexual anarchists, they don't really want the white picket fence. They hate that God has designed it in such a way that marriage is between a man and a woman. They don't want the white picket fence. They want access to it so that they can burn it down. And that's what we see here. Certainly there are anecdotally, I think, individuals who would like to enter into a same-sex marriage, but the activists, the movement behind it, the idea here is to strong-arm, as with the many examples that we've just given, strong-arm those who do recognize the reality that there is no such thing as same-sex marriage, to strong-arm them into compliance. And
the reality is that when you look at the numbers, there's not going to be a huge amount of people entering into same-sex marriages. No. It's not particularly males. Males are not going to rush to the altar to marry another male, because what you have is a non-monogamous relationship, typically within the male-male relationship. You have open relationships. They're not rushing to the altar to get married. The majority of them, vast majority of them, will not enter into a marriage. So it's not that there's going to be a lot of these marriages. However, same-sex marriage does is it elevates it to a level of a civil right. And that becomes a bully club that changes society and forces people to accept it. And not just accept it, but as you and I know, what they do is not just talk about tolerance or anti-bullying, those kinds of ideas. They actually force people to be introduced to radical, abhorrent sexual practices.
That's exactly right. It gives the official government stamp of approval on demonstrably aberrant sexual behavior. And that is exactly what they're after, so that anybody who disagrees or holds to a biblical model and a traditional model of sexual morality, that individual is the modern day racist, and that's what they want is the government to silence those who oppose homosexual behavior.
Well, one study showed that 57% of New Yorkers support natural marriage. And then, of course, there's even greater that support natural marriage across the country. We need to rise up in New York and every other state to oppose this. Like, for example, in California, where the courts went the wrong way, we had a constitutional marriage amendment that overturned it. Where the legislature went the wrong way, we need a constitutional marriage amendment in New York also to overturn this. Give Liberty Counsel a call at 1-800-671-1776 and ask for my book, Same-Sex Marriage, Putting Every Household at Risk. That's Same-Sex Marriage, Putting Every Household at Risk. And also ask for the Patriot's Handbook on American Liberty, the Constitution, the Declaration of the United States, something that the legislators in New York ought to read. Certainly you ought to be aware of. We need to take back these values that founded America.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.